She's a lost soul. Nobody knows who she is. We take care of the dead. That's part of being a Catholic. We buried her like we would do any, like poor people, if they don't have the money, we bury them.
Years.
So without knowing who the victim is, we are already hurt.
My name is Rachel White, and I was born in Provincetown, spent my life here growing up here. When they found out the fashion that she was found in, how she was found, it caused a great deal of alarm, not only because of the problem of the murder, but also because it was the...
In July of 1974, an unidentified woman was found dead on the beach in the town of Truro at the very tip of Cape Cod, in Massachusetts. The body had been wrapped in burlap and the face had been covered with concrete. This is the strange story of the Lady of the Dunes. Hello, everyone. I'm here to talk about this case and several others. If you like true crime or unsolved mysteries, make sure that you subscribe so that you're notified every time I post a new video. In 1974, the town of Truro, Massachusetts was a small rural community. During the summer months, it grew to include hordes of tourists who came to enjoy its beautiful beaches and natural scenery. On July 26, the teenage boys were walking along the shore when they spotted something unusual. They saw what looked like a brown bundle just below the high tide line, near a row of cottages on the beach. At first they thought that maybe it was a seal, so they walked closer and realized it was actually a human body. The police were quickly notified, and when they arrived, they could see that the body was that of a Caucasian female. She was lying on her back with her arms by her side, palms facing up. Her legs were crossed and one arm was slightly raised. She was clothed only in a pair of tight blue jeans and was wearing no shoes. Whoever had put the body there had used a lot of force to push it into the sand. It took the officers 10 minutes of digging just to get her out. When the body was finally brought to the surface, it became clear that she had been mutilated before being left on the beach. The state medical examiner would later determine that she had been strangled. An autopsy showed that she had died between 2 and 6 hours before being discovered. There was no head trauma, but she did have some abrasions and lacerations to her lower legs and ankles, which likely came from being dragged along the beach. And yes, she had also been wrapped in burlap, the same material that had been used to wrap the body of Jack the Ripper's final victim, Mary Kelly. But in this case, the layer of burlap that had been wrapped around the victim's feet was made of a type of burlap that was manufactured until after Kelly's death in 1888. She also had another interesting physical attribute: her hair. It was long, dark, and straight, and curled inward at the ends, kind of like Shirley Temple curls. This gave investigators a clue as to her possible age, since young girls are more likely to have their hair styled that way. It was also apparent that she was between 20 and 35 years old and approximately 5 feet 6 inches tall. But perhaps the most disturbing part of all was her face. It had been covered with concrete. You heard me right, concrete. Whoever killed this woman had literally poured concrete over her face and let it harden. This isn't something that I think has ever happened in any other known murder case, although the concrete was chipped away and she did have facial features that could be seen through the gaps enough for witnesses to say that she appeared to be pretty. To have gone through such great lengths to hide her identity, to pour concrete over her face. Whoever killed her wanted her to be unidentified, and to this day, her identity remains a complete mystery. Her fingerprints didn't turn up in any criminal databases, and no one ever came forward to report her missing. DNA technology did not exist back then, and it would take nearly 30 years before anyone seriously considered testing her DNA. That didn't happen until 2003, but it didn't help investigators any. There was nothing in the database that matched hers. In 2016, a genetic genealogist took matters into his own hands and uploaded her profile to GetMatch.com, a public genealogy website. A match was finally made with a man who shared 3% of his DNA with the victim, which indicated that he was either her first cousin or second cousin once removed. But even with this new lead, the case went nowhere. No one knows who this woman was. What makes this case particularly puzzling is the fact that her body was found on a busy stretch of beach on a hot summer's day. There were hundreds of people on the beach when she was there, but no one saw anything or anyone. Witnesses said that during the day on July, the sky was clear with just a few scattered clouds. The temperature reached a balmy 78 degrees. With the humidity, it felt like about 85 degrees. That afternoon, there were an estimated 300 to 400 people on the beach, including many families with children. Lifeguards were on duty and several people reported seeing them rescue swimmers who had been caught in strong undertows. One witness recalled seeing a young couple arguing near where the body was later found. Another witnessed a black male running north on the beach, but no one saw the actual murder take place. Investigators believe that the woman had been dead for several days before being discovered, which would mean that she was likely killed sometime on July. What exactly when and why still remain a mystery. One theory suggests that she may have been the victim of a random act of violence by a stranger, someone who decided to attack her because she was alone on the beach. Under this theory, the killer was only interested in getting rid of the body somewhere remote, and so he chose to bury her in the sand, wrap her in burlap, and cover her face with concrete. However, we have to ask ourselves why he bothered to go to such great lengths to conceal her identity if he was just going to dump her body on a busy beach. It seems unlikely that a stranger would go to such great measures just to kill someone, especially considering that this is a relatively rare crime. Strangler murders only account for about 1% of homicides, and those who commit these crimes often do so impulsively, without planning. It would seem more likely that if he was going to dump her body on a beach, he wouldn't bother hiding her identity. Another theory suggests that this was a crime of passion, that the victim knew her attacker, but that's pure speculation, and there's absolutely no evidence to support it. What makes this case so intriguing is that there is really no logical explanation for the crime itself or the killer's bizarre behavior afterward. I personally tend to think that this was probably the work of a serial killer, someone who targeted women who were alone on the beach. But again, that's just my opinion. What do you think? Was this the work of a serial killer, or do you have another theory? Let me know in the comments. During the first few days following the discovery of the body, investigators did receive several tips, but none panned out. One woman came forward saying that she may have seen the victim hitchhiking on the shoulder of the road. Several people reported seeing a battered 1968 Dodge Dart station wagon in the area, and investigators even tracked down its owner. But all of these leads came to nothing. Over the years, the case went cold. Then, in 2003, advances in DNA technology allowed investigators to test samples taken from under her fingernails. The results showed that her killer had come into contact with another individual, a man, before she was killed. This suggests that she did, in fact, know her attacker, but unfortunately, the DNA sample was too degraded to be added to the national database. In 2016, that same genetic genealogist who uploaded her DNA profile to GetMatch.com also obtained another DNA sample from her left ring finger, the only finger that hadn't been crushed by the concrete. He sent it to an independent lab where it was reanalyzed. The victim's DNA profile was uploaded to a new genealogy website called Family Tree DNA. A distant relative of hers submitted his DNA to the site and a match was made. But once again, it was a very distant relative, a third cousin or farther. This hasn't really gotten investigators any closer to solving the case, though I find it difficult to believe that a massive genealogy project won't eventually turn up a closer match. The problem is that this victim had been dead for almost 50 years before anyone seriously tried to identify her, and by then, some of her close relatives may have even passed away themselves. But hopefully that day will come soon, and when it does, maybe then we'll learn the identity of the Lady of the Dunes and how she met her untimely demise. As always, I appreciate your support. Please remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and as always, thanks for watching.